Hey guys, so today's video idea came to me the other day when I was watching The Haunting of Molly Hartley for like the 5th time and decided to Google it. You know, when sometimes you're just watching a movie and you want to Google the actors and look up random trivia facts about it. So I was doing that, doing my research, when I realized it is rated so low on the internet, which is no surprise to me because although it is a bad movie, I always come back to it time and time again. You know, sometimes we just have those movies that are technically not great, but for some reason we love them and keep coming back to them and rewatching them. You can call them guilty pleasures if you want to. I don't feel guilty about liking these movies. I just don't think that we should, you know, feel guilty for enjoying a certain film, even if other people hate it. Who cares? It's not that deep. The second reason why this video was created was because I got a couple comments on my Velvet Buzzsaw video, which the comments on that are funny to read anyway, but a few people had issue with my taste in movies, and they said, you know, I had to stop watching when you mentioned Escape Room and Bird Box were the last good movies you watched, considering those aren't good movies. If they took the time to watch my reviews on them, they would know why I enjoyed them, but instead I was just written off immediately, and that's fine. It doesn't affect me. And then I thought, if you think I have bad taste in movies because of those movies, well, fasten your seatbelts for this video. Now, to be fair, I never go off of online critics or ratings online or Rotten Tomatoes, which I am using Rotten Tomatoes as a reference for this video. I don't think it's necessary to, you know, go off of that because we all like different things in movies. And it's really just an arbitrary rating that does not mean we will like a movie or not. Maybe you have some critics or, you know, blogs that you look at and that you trust their opinions. Maybe I'm even one of those people where you trust my opinion. But keep in mind, you know, horror movies are subjective entertainment. We all like different things, different genres. Anyone else's opinion or ratings should not matter to whether or not you enjoy a film. And you also shouldn't feel guilty for liking films that other people don't. So with all that being said, we are going to be going from highest rated movie to lowest rated, but all of these movies have below a 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's also gauged on whether or not I have rewatched the movie, because there's tons of low rated movies that I've seen and loved, but all of these movies I have seen at least 3 times and always tend to come back to rewatch them. So that just tells you that they still, even though they're low rated, technically bad, still have rewatchability for me. So that should mean something, right? So here are my favorite lowest rated movies. Let's go. Number 10 on this list is The Ring 2. This comes in at a whopping 19% approval. Great critic rating. I don't know what it is. I really don't look at Rotten Tomatoes that often. I'm really surprised that this movie is seen and rated so bad. I mean, it's not my favorite Ring movie. Obviously the first one is, but the director of The Ring 2 is actually the original director of Ringu, the Japanese version that started it all. I'm surprised that, you know, the creator of the original Ring made The Ring 2 and then it's seen as such a bad movie. I enjoy it. I have obviously rewatched it, although that goes without saying with this video. I love a good Ring marathon. Now we have rings involved in that, which, by the way, we'll get to. Next up, we have Chernobyl Diaries. Now this comes in at 18% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this one is a very controversial one, I think, to say that I like because of all the history in Chernobyl, and this movie caused quite a stir when it was released and a lot of people like boycotted it and thought it was exploiting the tragedy that had happened in Chernobyl. I could see why this movie is insensitive, but for some reason I cannot stop watching it. It's always a movie that I'm like craving to watch. I've seen it probably at least 5 times. It's done by Oren Peli, who brought us the Paranormal Activity series franchise, so I really enjoy his work and I enjoy Chernobyl. It's kind of cheesy here and there, but for some reason there's something about it that I love. Stars Jesse McCartney really randomly, and if you're a 90s person, then maybe you remember him from his music days. Next up, we have Haunting in Connecticut. This has 17%. I believe the other films that came after it were also on this list, but those are not rewatchable to me. But Haunting in Connecticut is, I think it's kind of original of a story. It's very interesting. I do recommend it. Obviously, I recommend all the movies on this list. I believe it's also involved in like the Ed and Lorraine Warren stories and things like that. They had like researched the original story of The Haunting in Connecticut, I believe, if my memory serves me right. If not, then I'm totally making shit up right now. It doesn't surprise me that this movie has such a low rating, but it is one that I really enjoy coming back to and rewatching. Next up we have Last Exorcism Part 2. This has 16% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and this one is very sentimental for me. It's the movie that my boyfriend and I saw on our first date on my birthday in 2013, and he hated the film, but I love it. I loved the original one, and I still to this day prefer The Last Exorcism, just like the first one. I think it's so amazing, and the second one is definitely weaker and very strange. Like, it's a weird sequel. It's not the best sequel in the world, but of course, because it's sentimental, it's a first date movie, I remember it very vividly and own both and rewatch both all the time. So far we've covered movies that I can understand why they have such a low rating on Rotten Tomatoes. However, this next one I genuinely do not understand, because I love this film so much and I think a lot of horror fans enjoy it, so I'm really surprised that it comes in at this low of a rating, and that is 13 Ghosts. It's rated at 15%. This is one I have rewatched almost probably the most on this list, I want to say. Actually, yeah, it is the one I've seen the most on this list. I own it, obviously, on DVD and constantly rewatch it. I just think it's so good. Yes, there are cheesy moments, but this movie to me is very much my childhood, because I remember very vividly when I would go to my friend's house and spend the night. We would sleep in her sister's bed when she wasn't there, and on her sister's ceiling she had a 13 Ghosts poster, and this haunted me. Like, I would have nightmares. I hated that poster so much. This is before I got really into horror. I was very young at the time, and because of that poster I avoided that movie for so long, because I thought it was gonna be too scary for me, which is so ironic. I used to be a sensitive child, and I remember my stepbrother like telling me about the Juggernaut in the movie, and I was like, yeah, no, I can't watch that. Like, that's gonna be so scary. I painted this whole story in my head of how bad and like how terrifying this movie was, and I finally watched it and I was like, is that it? So ever since, I have loved it. I think it's a really interesting story, and I don't understand the low rating on this one. I think most people really enjoy it, people that I've talked to. To me, it's a classic, and it's kind of a funny story for me. Next one, I'm gonna get creamed for. People are gonna be like, yeah, no, we can't trust you on any opinion you give after saying that you enjoy this movie, because I'm not gonna be taken seriously after this. I really enjoy The Gallows. Now, I believe, have I reviewed this and said I hated it? Sometimes that happens, guys, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I see a movie and I hate it, but then there's a piece of me that like wants to rewatch it. Anyone else have that situation? That happens so often with me that I'll just like get in the mood to rewatch this terrible movie that I really didn't enjoy for some reason. I think what it is I typically really enjoy teen horror, however cheesy it may be. I will always kind of come back to that genre a lot and rewatch the terrible movies within that genre. And I feel like The Gallows is like the epitome of bad teen horror, but there's just some piece of me that has affection for it and wants to rewatch it sometimes. Next one is a very surprising one to me, and that is Rings. This one, we jumped way down. We were at 15 a second ago, now we're down to 8%. Wait till we get to the last movie. So Rings is a movie that I actually saw in theaters twice. I did that because I'm obsessed with the original Ring. If you watch my channel for a long time, you know it's my favorite movie of all time pretty much as far as horror goes. If you're curious, my favorite movie of all time is really Interstellar. I know, shocker. But I saw Rings twice because I had never seen Samara on the big screen, because when the other two Ring movies came out, I did not see them in theaters, so I was so excited to see Samara on the big screen, I had to go and see her twice. But 8%? 8%. I get it a little bit because I wasn't a huge fan of this. Again, not my favorite in the franchise by any means, but I have rewatched it many times, and ever since it coming out of theaters, I've still rewatched it. And I really like it. It's one of those that like grew on me. It wasn't my favorite. Obviously I still saw it twice, but that was mostly because of the experience in seeing Samara. It was actually the first movie I've ever watched by myself in the theater. And I mean, yes, technically it is a bad film. It's not the greatest, and it didn't do the Ring series justice in my opinion. But does a part of me still hope they make more? Absolutely. I'm gonna see every single one of them that they make. We have another one coming in at 8%, and that is Silent Hill Revelation. I just call it Silent Hill 2, to be honest. Obviously the first one is a classic, love it. I've seen it so many times, love Silent Hill. The second one, however, it's just different, and I feel like that's why it's rated so low, and also it's not the strongest story by any means, but I feel like the monsters are not as scary as the first one, but they are so unique and original, and it still gives me the Silent Hill vibes, and those kind of games are my favorite kind of horror games. So that's typically why I enjoy the films, because it is very reminiscent to me of those kind of horror vibes, and I still really like it. You know, I understand the movie itself isn't that strong, but the visuals and the monsters I think are really cool. So at number 2 is the movie that inspired this whole video in the first place, and that is The Haunting of Molly Hartley. This has been probably my number 1 guilty pleasure film. I hate calling it that because, like I said in the beginning, I don't feel guilty about liking this film. I enjoy The Haunting of Molly Hartley. I hate the second one though. She comes in at 3% on Rotten Tomatoes. Whew, ouch, that's a tough one. But it can go lower, and it does. Just wait for number 1. So The Haunting of Molly Hartley, to me, I don't know what it is about this one. It's such a simplistic movie that you can literally just have it on in the background and still catch every plot point that you need to and not even pay attention to it. I don't know, it's just something about it that I really enjoy. I like the lead actress. I know that's like pushing it, but it has some bigger actors in it actually that they probably regret doing this movie entirely, to be honest, and I would not blame them because, like I said, technically not the best film in the world. The plot is so weak and so simple that it's like, why even try? And taking first place of my favorite lowest rated movies is Rest Stop. This comes in at 0%. I bet you didn't know it could even go that low. No one liked it. 0% of people liked it. Make it 1% because I enjoy this movie. This is one that I watched in high school with my friends one night. I think it was like a sleepover situation. We watched Rest Stop, and so for me it's just like the memory of that experience was really fun for some reason, and so I like to come back to rewatching that movie. It's not necessarily the movie itself, but I just remember certain scenes very vividly, and so I like to rewatch it every now and again. It's probably the worst film on this list and deserves to be in first place as far as the lowest rated movie on this list. I don't think it deserves 0% though. I mean, there were people that put in their hard work into this film, and to give them a 0? Like I said though, these numbers are completely arbitrary to me anyway. I don't care about what Rotten Tomatoes has to say. I don't really care what critics have to say. I mention it here and there in my reviews just for reference, and obviously I do review films myself, but just keep in mind that, you know, what you like doesn't matter if other people do or don't like it as well. It's just entertainment, and that's what it's meant to be, and what it's meant to do is entertain us, and whatever entertains you, let that be your thing. You know, just don't judge others for the type of content and entertainment that they enjoy and type of horror movies. I'm really tired of this kind of elitist horror fan community that is like, oh, you like that movie? You are clearly not a horror fan, and I can't listen to any of your opinions anymore because you liked that film. To me, that's ridiculous, because everyone is going to have movies that some people like and some people don't. That is a given. I hope that with all that being said, that I still am a little reputable for you guys, and you still trust me a little bit in my opinion on horror movies. Let me know your top lowest rated movies that you enjoy down in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.